This is episode 1 of the 100 Mile Prep series. This is my first ever YouTube video. It's going to be a short one. I just want to give you a quick breakdown of how I got to this point training for my first 100 mile race, as well as give you a quick little race recap of the 50K Ultra I just ran in Niagara. So I started going to the gym in January of 2020. I was 17 years old and I just turned 23 yesterday, so it's been about 5.5 years I've been working out. And when I started out in the gym, I was very skinny, I was very weak, and my goal was just to get bigger, look better, get stronger. And so what I would do is bulk up, cut down, bulk up, cut down. And I did that for a couple of years until I started running. And what got me into running was this book I read called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I'm sure you've heard of it. And it really changed my perspective on what is possible. And I remember reading at one point in the book, he's talking about this 100 mile race that he was doing around a 1 mile track. And he had no training, he had no clue what he was doing in terms of hydration, fuel, stuff like that, but somehow he pulled it off. He did 101 miles in 19 hours and something minutes. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, if he can actually run 100 miles with zero training, what's stopping you from doing a marathon? That's always something I kind of wanted to do, but I saw it more as a bucket list type of thing, something I'd do 10, 15, 20 years down the road. But I vividly remember after finishing that chapter, closing the book and being like, you're doing this, man. Like, you're gonna run a marathon. I started looking up races. I saw the Ottawa Marathon was 3 months away, so I spent 3 months training for that. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I learned along the way. And I finished a marathon, ran like 4 hours and 50 something minutes. I really had no clue what I was doing for that first marathon. I was way underhydrated, underfueled. It was super hot out. I was cramping. It was just a brutal, brutal day. But after that race, I got home, I was reflecting, and I set some pretty big goals, and 2 of those were to run a sub 3 hour marathon and a 100 mile ultra marathon. So I signed up for my second marathon, which was in Quebec City. I ran a 4:01. My goal was sub 4 again, and the pacer didn't hit his pace. So I was still happy with that performance, considering I'm pretty sure I would have hit sub 4. After that, I was kind of off and on running for a little bit, but my next marathon was in Ottawa the year after. I ran sub 3:45. I was pretty happy with that. After that, I did my first ultra, which was the Niagara Ultra 50K, and I ran like 5:56. Didn't even train for it. It was brutal. It was kind of like my first marathon. It was just a shit show. And then after that, I started training for the 50 mile race. And in that training, I ran Mississauga Marathon, and I ran 3:36. And then for my 50 mile race, I ran 7 hours and 48 minutes, came in 6th place. My goal was sub 8, and it didn't come easy, but I was pretty pumped with that performance. I trained 6 whole months for it. And just like that, I'm now training for my first 100 miler. It's a 27-week training plan, and within that so far, I've PR'd my marathon, which is now a sub 3:20, and I just PR'd my 50K this past weekend, which was, I'll put the times up, but it was 4:22:0 something. So I'm going to give you a race recap of that 50K. The past few weeks of training going into that race, I ran for long runs on Saturdays. I ran the Ottawa Marathon, then the weekend after I ran 46K around the track, and then the weekend after was another marathon. The weekend after that was another marathon as well, and then the weekend after was a deload week, and then it was the 50K race. So going into the race, I was pretty confident. I knew I had a lot of long runs under my belt, and I had a good feeling my legs were going to hold up. So my goal was to finish first in my age group and get a podium finish, so finish top 3. I realized pretty early into the race that I probably wasn't going to place top 3, so I was just focused on hitting my goal time, which was sub 4 hours, sub 3:55. And I also saw a guy who looked exactly my age who just took off, zooming in front of everyone, right from the gun, so I figured I wasn't going to win my age group either. But like I said, I was just focused on hitting my goal time. I took off pretty hot. I was running in the 4:20s per kilometer for the first 5K, then it slowed down a bit, but I held a really good pace for 40K, averaging 4:40, 4:45 per kilometer for the first 25K up until the turnaround. So it was 25K out and 25K back. At the halfway mark, I checked my watch, it was 1:56:30. So I figured if I could just replicate that, I would hit well below sub 4 hours. And I got to the 40K mark, and I took a little bit too much time at an aid station, and it was really hard to get going again after that. It was more of a jog walk for the last 10K, trying to make my way to the finish line. I did finish off pretty strong running the last couple miles, and got to the finish line, got my medal, and that was the end of it. But that 50K really reminded me of my first marathon back in 2022 because of the heat, and also because of how much pain I was in. And not just the pain of how much your legs or body hurt, but also the mental pain of being like, I have 10K left to go and I can barely stand right now. That's where it can get really dark. You can start to get all caught up in your head. But something Goggins said on a podcast, and something I remind myself a lot in those situations, is, can you take one more step? And usually the answer is always yes. So I was just focusing on taking one more step, one step after another, and eventually you get to the finish line. But if you can ask yourself that question and the answer is yes, I can still take one more step, and you don't take another step, you DNF, well, that's what I consider a failure, because you could have, but you didn't. And I hate having to live with that feeling. That's pretty much all I have for this video. I definitely want to keep making more, because I know there's always going to be another goal, another thing to work towards. So if you made it this far in the video, I do appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one.